The author's word. I have based this story on factual memories, but the melodrama is fictional. Any resemblance between those characters and real people, living or dead, is coincidental. The map and satellite photo may help you understand locations mentioned in the text. In the engaging stage play Ipperwash, Phelan Johnson and Jessica Carmichael lead us to consider place, loss of home, and dislocation from our roots. They presented the story as an explanation of the native people's connection to the land. I left the Blythe Theatre with a mixture of excitement and sadness in my heart. Our industrial culture over the past 200 years has led to dislocation for most of us, as economics has forced people to move on, or has obliterated our places of youth. And in my case, both happened with High Falls. It had disappeared by 1980. My experience fostering children has taught me that life denies the opportunity to many young people to have a place of roots for happy, youthful memories. Perhaps this is the basis of the growing craziness of the industrial world. Readers of my first fiction, After the Last Day, may recognize that this loss is one of the great shadows that dog my characters. I cannot say we all yearn for recovery of place, but I always have. I never really felt at home anywhere. This story explores my yearning. I am presenting here a personal and incomplete vignette of my life in High Falls until about grade 10. At that age, High Falls changed from being my world to become my sometimes refuge as I focused more on my life on outside interests, high school and university. In later life, High Falls has become my refuge of memory, my spiritual place that anchors while waiting to be called into the safe harbor. I left High Falls for the last time in January 1970. High Falls is a hydroelectric generating complex built where, in a series of rapids and falls, the Spanish River descends over an ancient fault line in the earth that can be traced all the way from Quebec to Montana, and known in the area as the Murray Fault. Local faulting is a consequence of the asteroid impact almost 2 billion years ago that created the Sudbury Basin. High Falls sits about 50 kilometers west of Coppercliff, Sudbury, and 20 kilometers straight line from Espanola, which itself exists because of another falls on the river. People logged the Spanish River Valley extensively in the late 1800s, and a logger first suggested that the complex, then known as Twin Falls, would be a good site for electrical generation. The Canadian Copper Company created the Huronian Power Company, and the site generated first power in 1906. My grandfather, Albert Prentice, arrived in High Falls in 1912. Sometime after 1906, Huronian completed the secondary dams for the lower plants and No. 2 generating station, making it possible to establish the town on a sand and clay levee east of the power plants. The river, about 200 meters wide, defined the southern extent of the houses, and No. 2 tail race marks the western boundary. The swimming hole, beach, lay near the lower rapids below the falls, about a kilometer upstream from the village. Until the 1930s, a spur from the Eastern Algoma Railway, and later the CPR, served the site, and they named the junction Turbine. Many workers labored there in the era before diesel power could replace them, and at the height of construction, perhaps 3,000 lived at the site. The only traces of their camps were the trash heaps east of the town. Big Eddy Dam was completed about 1920, creating the 40-kilometer-long Agnew Lake, but the power plant did not generate electricity until about 1930. The Big Eddy Dam is 1.5 kilometers upstream from the town and No. 1 plant, first reached by a railway line and later by a road that paralleled the abandoned track bed. In total, water drops in 2 stages almost 60 meters from the level of Agnew Lake to the High Falls tail race. I only knew the town long after High Falls Road replaced the railway. In the story, you can trace this on the map and satellite photo below. I walk on the roads that follow the old tracks. I stop at the No. 2 plant near the ponds and in the riverbed left exposed by damming the second falls that gave the name Twin Falls. Then I reminisce at the west end of the secondary High Falls Dam, 100 meters off the Big Eddy Road, and across the High Falls No. 1 and 2 water intake canal from the overflow dam. After, I walk on up to Big Eddy. In the end, I sit at the spot about 30 meters above the town site, where the old railway trestle brought the tracks up to the level of Big Eddy Road, halfway up the big rock hill that dominated the northern side of the town. Our school sat on the east side of town, just past a little creek. The gate is now just west of where the stream passes under the only road that enters the complex, although we had 3 ways into town. The low road went to the town, and the high road to the power plants between the houses and the hill. A back road passed behind the school, through the edge of the bush and on to our house. The 2 main roads connected at the school, and with 2 side streets, one between the clubhouse and Grandpa's house, and the other between the clubhouse and the little cottage house where we first lived. Quietness dominated life with little vehicle traffic and a lot of walking. As children, we walked or biked everywhere. What we called the sand pit or the hopper was about a half-kilometer downstream, where the river made a sharp turn over a gravel bar and disappeared on its way to Nairn Falls and Espanola. The garbage dump was 2 kilometers out of town towards Turbine, which was about 5 kilometers from the village. At the outset, I had to struggle with how personal to be and whether to name the actual people I knew. I decided to use real names where they came to my memory, and if there was a somewhat negative relationship, I stress that this account is from my point of view, while others may have had other experiences which I did not understand or appreciate at the time. There is only one instance I use a made-up name. In spite of the deep anxiety I felt from our earlier confrontations, in 1969 I had the opportunity to work beside this person, and we had a positive relationship. We both had changed. Tragically, the young man in question had his struggles, and his life was suddenly cut short. I'm still thankful our relationship taught me that healing and transformation are possible in human affairs. It seems to support the natives' concept of healing circles and restoration. If there is a secondary purpose to this effort, it is to pass on that possibility for my children and grandchildren to consider. I am not writing a tell-all, so I'm not going to pile on the personal angst, but focus on the memory of mostly pleasant places and events. As well, it is not a story of continuous upward progress in maturing and understanding. Life is not like that, but made up of the dialectical dance of advances leading to setback, and then defeats turning to victories in an endless cycle. The story captures photographs from my memory that I had not put onto film. I want to share these with family and perhaps other interested people. I'm also trying to sort out memory and place in my mind and heart. The photographs in the documents somewhat match the narrative. I seldom write any story with a preconceived structure, but as a flow that grows naturally and becomes fixed onto paper. This account is the same, so memories, as they occur in the story, may not be in chronological or geographic order. These memories have frequently come to mind through my life and have the randomness of flashing signs in a streetscape. Readers may experience this confusion of time and space reflected in the simple literary device I employ, the interaction between Moe and Donnie. In part, this style is a tribute to the native way of preserving history through story. In the same way, the dramatic story is not only to add some interest, but to remind us, especially me, that High Falls has changed, and new people are living out different lives, writing new stories connected to the place. The text reflects the randomness of our play as children in High Falls with no plan. One day we would visit the sandpit downriver, another up the big hill, and another to the island between the High Falls No. 1 and the falls, bike to the garbage dump, to the dams, Frog Pond, or Big Eddy. Summers especially held a random wild ride in a real-life natural wonderland. Each day was an escape into the orchard. We had so many apples to pick. Mo's explicit memories and Donnie's seemingly random adventures describe real events and places in my childhood as accurately as I remember them. These memories have always brought feelings of pleasure and longing. I hope the work summarizes all of these for my family, memories and thoughts that I sadly never really received from my parents. I had no opportunity to hear from Grandfather Prentice, who disappeared from my life, dying before I was 2, or from Grandpa Hayward, who was never known to me but only a name and a photo of a middle-aged man. Grandma Hayward simply appeared as a weathered grave marker in Kettleby Cemetery. I longed to know Dad's heart in his own story, but his experience of pain was too much for him to pass on, and some of what Mum shared carried her pain. In love, I give mine to you all.